You probably know your zodiac sign, but do you know the story of divine jealousy, abduction, or brutal revenge that put it in the sky? The ancient Greeks didn't just see stars, they saw the climactic final scenes of their most epic stories immortalized for all time. Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Jason Hamilton. I'm a fantasy author. I've built a shared universe for the all-world mythologies combined into one, and Chaotic Tales is literally what I do. Today, we're diving into the original Greek myths behind every single sign of the zodiac, and trust me, they're way more intense than your daily horoscope. The Greeks saw the cosmos as a stage for divine drama and heroic trials. The fire signs, Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, burn with this energy. They aren't just personality types, they are stories of direct godly intervention, impossible labors, and the raw power that forges legends. The story of Aries begins with a family crisis. King Athamas had two children, Phrixus and Helle, with the cloud goddess Nephele. But when the king fell for a mortal woman named Ino, Nephele vanished in a rage, leaving the land in a devastating drought. The new queen, Ino, despised her stepchildren and devised a wicked plan. She secretly roasted all the crop seeds so nothing would grow, then bribed the oracle's messenger to deliver a false prophecy. To end the famine, the king must sacrifice his own children. As Phrixus and Helle were led to the altar, their mother, Nephele, watched from the heavens in horror. She sent a rescuer, but it wasn't a hero or a god, it was a magnificent ram with a fleece of pure gold, a divine creature capable of flight. The children scrambled onto its back, and it soared into the sky away from their murderous stepmother. But the escape was not without tragedy. As they flew over the strait separating Europe and Asia, Helle lost her grip and fell to her death in the waters below, which were forever after named the Hellespont in her memory. Phrixus alone made it to the distant land of Colchis. In gratitude, he sacrificed the ram to the god, and its legendary golden fleece became the object of a quest that would define a generation of heroes. To honor its sacrifice, Zeus placed the ram in the stars as the constellation Aries, a symbol of new beginnings born from a desperate escape. Leo is linked to the king of all heroes, Heracles, and his very first labor. The Nemean lion was no ordinary beast. It was a monster, the offspring of Typhon and Echidna, whose golden fur was impenetrable to any mortal weapon. It terrorized the land of Nemea, and the task of killing it was considered a suicide mission. When Heracles arrived, he quickly discovered that his arrows bounced harmlessly off its hide, and his sword couldn't make a scratch. Realizing that conventional weapons were useless, Heracles was forced to rely on his own divine strength. He tossed aside his weapons and faced the monster with his bare hands. He cornered the lion in its lair, and after a brutal struggle that cost him one of his fingers, he managed to lock his arms around its neck and strangle it to death. But his challenge wasn't over. He still couldn't skin the beast. It was the goddess Athena who advised him to use the lion's own razor-sharp claws to flay its impenetrable hide. Heracles then wore the skin as a set of armor, making him nearly invincible. Zeus, impressed by both the lion's ferocity and the hero's ingenuity, placed the creature in the night sky as the constellation Leo, an eternal monument to a battle won not by weapons but by raw power and wit. The myth behind Sagittarius is a bit more complex, with a few conflicting accounts. The most common story links the constellation to Chiron, the wisest and most civilized of the centaurs. Unlike his wild brethren, Chiron was a renowned scholar, healer, and mentor who trained many of Greece's greatest heroes, including Achilles and Asclepius. He was a beacon of wisdom, not a wild warrior, so why is he depicted as an archer? An alternative theory identifies Sagittarius not as Chiron, but as a satyr named Crotus, a companion to the Muses on Mount Helicon. Crotus was celebrated as the inventor of the hunting bow and the art of archery. He was a great musician and hunter, and the Muses so enjoyed his company that they asked Zeus to place him among the stars. The resulting constellation depicted him as a centaur-like figure with a bow, honoring both his skill as an archer and his rustic, part-animal nature. Whether it's the wise Chiron or the inventive Crotus, Sagittarius became a symbol of aiming for a higher purpose, whether through knowledge or through skill. But the story doesn't end there. The dark side of a centaur's life would bring tragedy to them all. While the fire signs tell tales of action, the earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, are rooted in stories of transformation, order, and the quiet strength needed to nurture greatness. These are the myths of divine deception, eternal justice, and the hidden beginnings of the king of the gods himself. The story of Taurus is a tale of divine lust and abduction. Zeus, the king of the gods, became infatuated with Europa, a beautiful Phoenician princess. Knowing a direct approach would likely fail, he he devised a clever disguise. He transformed himself into a magnificent white bull, more beautiful than any mortal creature, and mingled with her father's herbs. Europa and her handmaidens were gathering flowers by the shore when they saw the bull. It was so calm and gentle that Europa's fear melted away. She adored its horns with flowers and, growing bolder, climbed onto its back. That was Zeus's moment. The bull instantly charged into the sea, carrying the terrified princess away from her home. He swam all the way to the island of Crete, where he finally revealed his true form. Europa became the first queen of Crete and a mother to a line of kings. To commemorate his successful seduction, Zeus placed the image of the white bull in the stars as Taurus, a symbol of fertility, strength, and the undeniable power of a god's desire. Now, Virgo has been linked to several goddesses of purity and harvest, like Persephone, but her most direct myth is that of Astraea, the virgin goddess of justice. Astraea was a titan, the daughter of Zeus's own divine law personified, Themis. During the golden age of humanity, she lived among mortals, bringing them peace and teaching them justice. But as humanity grew more corrupt through the Silver and Bronze Ages, Astraea became disillusioned. She watched as greed, war, and lies poisoned the world. She was the very last of the immortals to abandon Earth. Disheartened by humanity's wickedness, she fled to the heavens. Zeus, who respected her unwavering loyalty to justice, raised her into the sky and placed her among the stars as the constellation Virgo. Her presence in the heavens became a distant reminder of the paradise humanity had lost and the purity it had abandoned. Virgo's story is directly tied to Libra's. When Astraea ascended to the heavens, she carried with her the scales of justice, the very tool she used to weigh the deeds of men. These scales, a symbol of balance, fairness, and divine order, were placed beside her in the sky, forming the constellation Libra. Unlike the modern depiction of a blindfolded Lady Justice, Astraea's justice was not blind. She was said to have clear sight and supernatural vision, able to see through any deception to the truth of the matter. Libra, therefore, doesn't just represent balance, but the wisdom and clarity it required to achieve it. And together, Virgo and Libra tell a story of a world that lost its moral compass and the eternal principles of justice and purity that now watch over it from the stars. And you'll probably notice that there are no sponsors or annoying ad reads in the middle of these videos, at least as far as I can control. That's intentional because we're completely self-funded. I do have one quick thing I think you might like though, and that's my fantasy all-access library. It's where you can get all of my mythology-inspired fantasy books my team and I have written, all set in a massive shared universe where all of world mythology coexists. It's how I fund this channel, so if that sounds cool to you, check out the link in the description, and let's get back to it. The air signs, Gemini, Aquarius, and Libra, who we've already met, tell stories not of brute force, but of relationships, communication, and the complex duties that tie mortals to the gods. They are myths of unbreakable bonds, a mortal's elevation to eternal service, and the very concept of cosmic order. The story of Gemini is the tale of two brothers, the twins Castor and Pollux. Though they shared a mother, Leda, they had different fathers. Castor was the mortal son of the Spartan king, while Pollux was the immortal son of Zeus, who had seduced Leda in the form of a swan. Despite this fundamental difference, the brothers were inseparable. They were renowned heroes, sailing with Jason on the Argo and respected as masterful horsemen and boxers. Their bond was tested when Castor, being mortal, was killed in a battle. Pollux was devastated. He begged his father Zeus to let him die as well, so that he would not be separated from his brother. Moved by his love and loyalty, Zeus offered a compromise. The brothers could share Pollux's immortality. They would spend one day together on Mount Olympus and the next in the underworld, forever alternating between the realms of the gods and the dead. To honor their incredible bond, Zeus placed them side by side in the sky as the constellation Gemini, an eternal symbol of brotherhood that even death could not break. Aquarius is the story of Ganymede, a young Trojan prince who was said to be the most beautiful mortal man alive. His beauty was so extraordinary that it caught the eye of Zeus himself. The king of the gods, either transforming it into a giant eagle or sending one to do his bidding, abducted Ganymede from the fields where he was tending his sheep and carried him off to Mount Olympus. There, Zeus granted Ganymede eternal youth and immortality, appointing him as the new cupbearer to the gods, a role previously held by Hera's daughter. This, of course, enraged Hera, but Ganymede served his role well. He became a symbol of a different kind of bond. Legend says that from his place among the gods, Ganymede looked down and saw humanity suffering from a drought. Filled with compassion, he pleaded with Zeus to help them. In response, Zeus allowed him to send rain down to the earth. His image was then placed among the stars as Aquarius, the water bearer, a mortal elevated to divine service who still cared for the world he left behind. Finally, the water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, plunge us into the depths of emotion. These are the myths driven by fierce loyalty, deadly revenge, and the desperate instinct for survival. They tell of small creatures making big impacts, of an eternal celestial chase, and a clever escape from the most fearsome monster of all. The story of Cancer the crab is a small but significant moment in the saga of Heracles. Hercules. During his second labor, the hero was tasked with destroying Lernaean Hydra, a multi-headed serpent beast. The fight was brutal. Every time Hercules cut off one head, two more grew back. Watching from afar was the goddess Hera, who despised Hercules as a living symbol of her husband's infidelity, which, who can blame her? Determined to see Heracles fail, Hera sent a giant crab, Carcinus, to aid the Hydra. The crab scuttled out of the swamp and clamped down on Heracles' foot, trying to distract him at a critical moment. Though the attack was valiant, it was ultimately futile, and enraged Heracles simply crushed the crab under his powerful heel and went on to defeat the Hydra. Though the crab failed, Hera was touched by its loyalty. To honor its brave, if doomed, sacrifice, she placed its image among the stars as the constellation Cancer, giving us the fact that even in failure, loyalty is a virtue worthy of immortality. The myth of Scorpio is forever tied to the fate of the great hunter Orion. Orion was a giant of a man, handsome and a peerless hunter, but his skill bred arrogance. In a moment of hubris, he boasted that he would hunt and kill every single animal on Earth. This declaration was an existential threat to the natural order, and it angered Gaia, the primordial goddess of the Earth herself. To put an end to his arrogance, Gaia sent a single small agent, a giant scorpion. The tiny creature pursued the mighty hunter, and in the end, it managed to deliver a single fatal sting. The gods, respecting the prowess of both the hunter and the creature that bested him, placed both among the stars, but they placed them on opposite ends of the night sky. To this day, as the constellation Scorpio rises over the horizon, the constellation of Orion begins to set, forever fleeing the creature that caused his demise, an eternal chase that serves as a cosmic warning against hubris. The final sign, Pisces, tells a story of divine terror and clever escape during the gods' war with the Titans. After the Olympians had defeated the Titans, Gaia, furious at the imprisonment of her children, unleashed her most horrific offspring, the monster Typhon. He was a creature of immense size and power, with 100 dragon heads and fire blazing from his eyes. His appearance was so terrifying that nearly all of the gods fled in panic. In their flight to Egypt, many of the gods disguised themselves as animals. Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and her son Eros found themselves cornered by the monsters near the Euphrates River. In a moment of desperation, they transformed themselves into two fish, leaped into the water, and swam to safety. To ensure they wouldn't be separated in the chaos, they tied their tails together with a cord. To commemorate this clever escape from the greatest threats the gods ever faced, the image of the two connected fish was placed in the sky as the constellation Pisces, a symbol of adapting and surviving even in the most overwhelming odds. So why did the Greeks project these epic stories and onto the stars? It wasn't just random. This was a transition from the purely mathematical and seasonal astronomy of earlier civilizations like Babylon. The Greeks weren't just tracking seasons, they were creating a celestial map of their entire worldview. Each myth associated with a constellation was a way to encode cultural values, psychological insights, and spiritual beliefs into a kind of cosmic framework. These stories served as explanations for human nature, divine justice, and the eternal struggle between mortal ambition and immortal power. The Romans later adopted this system, translating the names into Latin, which is why we have names like Mars instead of Ares, but the core Greek stories remain. This rich mythological tapestry has been so powerful that it's survived thousands of years of cultural, scientific, and religious change. The persistence of these myths suggests that they tap into archetypal elements of human experience, heroism, love, betrayal, and transformation, that are just as relevant today as they were in ancient Greece. The power of these myths is why I fell in love with them, honestly, and it's the foundation of the entire fictional universe that I've been building for years now. If you enjoy diving this deep into mythology, I think you'll love what we're doing over in our school community. It's called the Fantasy All Access Library, and it's more than just a book club. It's where you get every single ebook and audiobook that we release, at least one new novel every month, plus you can join me for weekly live calls where we discuss mythology, writing, nerd stuff, and it's a community for people who live and breathe this sort of thing. If you want to go from just watching videos about mythology to living inside a universe built from it, check out the link below. I'd love to see you there.